We're back again, folks. We got a special request here that's been in the docket, and my friend has been asking me for a long time to review her favorite movie, one of her favorite movies.
Okay.
Danielle of Manteca, formerly sales manager at CarMax in Modesto, and now who knows what she does. But she has been requesting for a long time for me to review the 1988 classic, because apparently it is an 80s classic, Cocktail, starring Tom Cruise, co-starring Brian Brown and Elizabeth Shue. So this is an interesting story. This was originally a novel written by a guy named Haywood Gold as sort of an autobiographical experience of his real life as a bartender in Manhattan from 1969 to 1981. So Haywood Gold is a Hollywood screenwriter and a journalist and novelist. And basically, he's one of the guys that became a bartender to support himself as his writing endeavors were trying to take off and build. But it was kind of a mix of real-life experiences into this novel. And the story that he wrote was adapted into the screenplay that we see here. Interestingly enough, this was made by the Walt Disney Studios. Touchstone Pictures is their non-family version of films, because this movie's definitely rated R. And it's got all the profanity and adult scenes that you would imagine an 80s movie to have. So he wrote a version of this film for his book that Disney completely changed and made it more Hollywood-esque. The original character of Flanagan was a much older guy that wasn't as likable, and the original book had a very negative outcome where you get stuck into being a bartender, and 10 years later you're still a bartender and you're not really bettering your life. You just kind of adapted into the role of becoming a bartender. And so then the Hollywood version, which he said he felt like it worked for Hollywood, the studios made it have a more positive outcome. Critics hate this movie, which is funny because we got kids. Commercially, it's a very successful film, which I think is a barometer for how good of a movie is, because people aren't going to recommend their friends to go see a movie that's not a great film. On a $20 million budget, this movie grossed $171.5 million at the box office back in 1988. The film was directed by a guy named Roger Donaldson. One of the other films that I've seen of his is called Cadillac Man. Came out in the early 90s. It's Robin Williams and Tim Robbins are in it. It's a pretty good movie. I don't think I was doing reviews on my movie on the channel at that point. I think the first time I saw that movie was during the pandemic around 2020. So that's the other movie that I could mention of his that I have seen personally. Roger Donaldson, the director, is Australian. So the movie's got an hour and 43-minute runtime. There's this other femme fatale person named Carrie in the movie, and she originally had a lot more character development, and then Disney cut all of her scenes to kind of explain her character and why she was the way she was, and she hated the version of the film where they basically cut her bigger performance than she had originally. So a lot of people did not like what Disney did to this film, but you can't argue with the $171 million box office success, right? It's a fun movie. Even Tom Cruise said that it wasn't one of the crown jewels of his movie catalog in an interview that he gave. But I disagree. And Haywood Gold, the guy that wrote the novel that would become the screenplay, he hated it, and he said that it received hate from critics because it was not the film that he envisioned. The film that he envisioned was a much darker movie. Think of that movie Barfly that I reviewed a couple of months back starring Mickey Rourke. Kind of a dark movie. Not really a happy ending necessarily. This is a very interesting film because the movie was nominated and won Worst Movie of the Year at the Razzies in 1988. And Tom Cruise also appeared in 1988's Rain Man, which won Best Picture of the Year at the Academy Awards. And I just think it's a fun movie and an enjoyable movie, and it even has some morals in it. I'm sad that Nicole's not here because I really want her take on it, but I guess I can get everything that I want to say out of the way, and then we could talk about what she wants to say about it. So, that being said, I could tell right away that I was really going to enjoy the movie, and I identify with this movie because of essentially what Haywood Gold, the original writer, said. It's basically about a guy in his mid to late 30s that envisioned his life being one way, and now he's a bartender, and what is he doing? He's stuck. And that's kind of me. I'm in my mid to late 30s, unemployed, and kind of trying to figure my life out. Now, the Tom Cruise character Flanagan, he did have this vision, and you kind of see him go through the process, which is what I really liked. He comes out of the Army. He's directionless. His Uncle Pat owns a bar in Queens, and so then he goes to New York to try and make it big, goes to all these advertising agencies, stock Goldman Sachs types of places. No one will hire an Army veteran. I'm guessing it was different than it is now. He can't find a job. So then what does he do? He wanders into TGI Fridays where he meets Doug, the bartender. And you think, okay, TGI Fridays, not really a prestigious watering hole, but, you know, he was desperate for work. It was the late 80s, and he was willing to take what he could get. So then they become fast friends. Doug shows him the ropes of bartending. Doug's played by Brian Brown. Loved his performance in the movie. But it's just, you kind of see this story of where the Flanagan character is chasing after wealth, and he thinks that's going to make him happy. And then his friend Doug eventually marries a very wealthy woman and is completely miserable. So money isn't everything. And Doug's just like, all my friends are a bunch of phony elites that are just chasing me for my money and the money that I've married into. And it's all a fraud and all a persona, where the real life people are just like the bartender character of Flanagan. And even Flanagan's kind of like leaning the way where he's like, oh, maybe I'll go and I'll get in this riches. And then he gets a taste of it and he realizes it's not what he really wants. So
True.
That's kind of why I really liked the movie, where he was like having this huge metamorphosis of what's real. And that's kind of what drew me in. Forget those critics. I don't know how this movie only has a 9% Rotten Tomato score and a 5.9 out of 10 on IMDb, where I think the real people are the Google users. 68 people have posted their reviews on it with a 4.2 out of 5 average. So tell me what you think about the movie. I haven't given my official review yet, but we're getting there.
Oh, okay. I'm 3 out of 5, I guess. It's pretty good. It has a good soundtrack. I like the way it was
classic
filmed.
Soundtrack.
Yeah. You kind of start hating this guy, not right away, but at one point in the film.
Without spoilers.
He's pretty rotten at a point, so he makes some big mistakes, and you kind of hate his guts for a while, but yeah, basically he just has his uncle and then his best friend, who's the guy the guy calls him his protege, and basically he was like his apprentice and taught him everything he knew. The older guy taught Tom Cruise everything he knew. Yeah, the Doug character. Sorry, can't think of his name, but or couldn't think of his name. But yeah, it was good, but it's just, yeah, when he's chasing like the wealth, and then his friend, who's his best friend, Doug, he's just not really a great influence. Like, yeah, he teaches him the ways of how to
be a bartender
and like all the tricks, and they're juggling the glasses and juggling the bottles, the liquor bottles and stuff like that. Like, it's cool to watch those scenes and stuff, but I just think at first the movie seemed like it was really glorifying like being an alcoholic and drinking and stuff.
The bar life.
Yeah, but I guess like about 3/4 of the way through, you kind of start to realize, because of some events that happen, that okay,
this isn't
maybe
really a great life.
Drinking all the time and like you're always falling down drunk, maybe that's like not so cool.
Sleeping around.
Yeah, and then his best friend does like give him some bad ideas, because he has this woman who he met who he
named Carrie.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, not Carrie. Carrie was the older lady, wasn't she?
Oh, yeah,
I don't
right.
know.
Carrie was the older lady.
I can't remember
what his true
There was a lot of
different I
can't remember what his true love's name was, but
Jordan.
Okay, yeah, you're right, Jordan. So he meets her when they're in Jamaica, and he's like, I really like this woman. Like, he starts really thinking maybe they could build a future together. But then the Doug, I guess I'm giving spoilers, sorry.
It's fine.
But then the Doug character.
It's a 30-year-old movie.
Yeah. But then the Doug character is like, oh, you're not like me. Like, you set your sights so low. Like, you picked the poorest girl you could to like shack up with and be with. And he's like, whereas, like, I'm smart. I found, like, a beautiful woman who also has a ton of money. And so I'm like better than you. And he's like, I bet that you can't use your charm to like woo this older woman who's sitting over there at the bar.
Basically be a gold digger, right? He's basically preaching be a gold digger and get attached to a woman that can pay your way.
Exactly. So he's like, you're like not smart like I am and stuff. So he's kind of like, and this wasn't the first time that he did something to really screw up this guy's life, but the guy forgave him.
That's another situation.
That was like frustrating. And then
why is he still friends with the Doug character?
Exactly, but
and why is he taking Doug's advice?
But you kind of get the
because he's a young impressionable guy.
Well, that's kind of like the best friend that he had in town, like besides his uncle. So I feel like he didn't want to let that friendship go. And then they were also like planning these business ventures together, but. Basically, he spoils his relationship with like his love for like a $50 bet over this older lady who he didn't really ever care about. Yeah. He just was trying to like prove a point.
But that was a good moral play in the movie too, because of it later on shows you like that's what it was. You know, it wasn't what he needed and it wasn't what he wanted, and he threw away the good thing.
Yeah, it does show that he, you know, potentially screwed up a really good relationship just to like be this macho guy and like win a bet basically, and that how stupid that was.
No more spoilers.
So, yeah, but there are some twists and turns in this movie that are super unexpected. So I like that. I like when a movie can kind of
I'm higher than your 3 out of 5.
Take you off guard.
Yeah, it took us off guard. I'm gonna go 4 out of 5.
You're gonna go,
I liked it. It's got that Beach Boys classic Kokomo.
Oh yeah, the Beach Boys.
Very 80s with the way they dress and all of his Tom Cruise's wardrobe. I love it. I wear it now.
His wardrobe is basically what Corey wears.
It's basically what I wear on a regular basis now in modern times.
Yeah.
All those vintage 80s shirts.
In fact, at one point I said, don't you have that same shirt like in your closet? And he's like, yeah, let me go find it. And he was like looking for it.
So thank you, Danielle, for recommending this classic. The box office totals are what matter. This was a huge success. It truly is a classic. $20 million budget. It made $171 million at the box office in 1988.
I don't think it should have gotten 9%.
Destroyed it.
I don't think it should have gotten 9% on Rotten Tomatoes.
It's much better than that.
I'm sorry, Danielle. I don't think it's a classic.
Why don't you? Why don't you?
So sorry.
Let's elaborate on why.
I can see why you love it and why you quote it. So I mean, there's that. Like
there's some great lines in this movie,
but there are some great lines.
And people love this movie because I started reading the Google reviews of just average people, and people live and die by this movie. Like it's wild that people go down a rabbit hole of this movie where they're quoting lines and they memorize parts of it.
As far as it being rated R, I feel like it wasn't that
There were
bad.
some F words.
And there was one kind of bloody scene. There was boob.
You didn't see no full frontal.
Oh, thank God.
But we saw enough.
Saw more than I wanted to see. But as far as like, there's not really violence per se. Not really that much. It's just, mostly the cursing and some sexual elements. But as far as this being like rated R, they could have toned it down a little bit.
They could have made it PG-13 easily. I would have liked to see. I would like to see a different version of this film that the original novelist, the Haywood Gold guy, wrote, where he said it was a much darker film with no redemption in the end for the main character.
Oh no!
Because he said originally the Tom Cruise character was a much older guy that never really did anything by the end of the story.
Oh no!
I'd be interested in reading his novel to see the comparison.
I wouldn't. I don't like.
You don't like anything
anything. You guys
with
know
a
I
dark
don't want
and
anything
dreary
that's
ending.
so dark that there's no redemption. I need the redemption. Otherwise, why am I even bothering?
We're running long on this review. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you, Danielle, once again for the recommendation. I really enjoyed it. Until next time, we'll see you then.
Bye.